Hey y'all, welcome back to another Tim Talks Christian Rock. Tim Risto here. It is so good to see you once again. I know it's been a bit of a long haul since my last episode. Had tons of work come up, and the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it's been, has just been crazy. No time to come up for air to do any kind of social media video. So my apologies for that. But back. Feels good to be back. Feels good to be doing this again. I'm back, and we're going to look at some Christian rock music today. One of the advantages of my having been busy and doing a lot of traveling with work is that I did have some opportunities to visit some new, vinyl shops or places that carry vinyl at least. One of my most favorite has been Half Price Books. I've mentioned it in some previous videos. That continues to be kind of my go-to spot, and I find a lot of great stuff there, both in their clearance sections, so the $1, $2, $3, bin, and also the some of the venues have actually religious or Christian music sections. So that's been kind of nice too, and I found stuff in both of those areas. So some stuff really cheap, some stuff a little more pricey, but still reasonable considering some of the finds. So got some good stuff. Got about 12 vinyls and then 1 CD to share with y'all today. So without further ado, let's get going. All right, so first up, and just to note, I will go in a chronological order in sharing these albums. So from the earliest recordings to the most recent ones, and then I'll do the CD at the very end. So first up was this Half Price Books find, "Sail On Sailor" by Mustard Seed Faith. I'm not a huge Mustard Seed Faith fan, but this album from 1975 really was their only recording to speak of, their only album to speak of, and kind of has a place in Christian music history because of it. And it's an early Jesus rock, Jesus music album. Has Odin Fong and also Louis McVeigh, who I've shared about some of his solo albums in the past as part of the band. And just kind of a unique album. I'm not a huge fan of music on here. All of the music on here, I do like the title track, "Sail On Sailor." And of course, this is really well known for the incredible cover art, which is one of the reasons I was so excited to find this. And I think I found it for like $6, so very, very reasonable. But the cover art is by Rick Griffin. Here's his name down the corner if you can see it. I don't know if you can, but very well known in the 60s for a lot of kind of psychedelic band posters and album cover art. Most particularly, he was associated with the Grateful Dead and did, I think, a number of their album cover art, the art for the album covers over the years. Not sure how he got to doing Mustard Seed Faith. I'm sure there's a story behind that. And in point of fact, if we hop on over to the Wikipedia page real quick here on Rick Griffin, we can actually find out a little more about that here, where it says the Gospel of John. It says here, Griffin became a born-again Christian in November 1970, which led to fundamental changes in his lifestyle and in the style and content of his art. His 1973 painting "Sail On Sailor" for the band Mustard Seed Faith is an example of his fine art painting from this period. His most significant 1970s project was the creation of hundreds of paintings and drawings for the Gospel of John, published by the Christian record label Maranatha Music. He also produced much album art for Maranatha during the 1970s and 1980s. I know he also did the album art for Daryl Mansfield Band for the Revelation album, another great piece of Christian album art. So there you go. But you got to admit, the art is actually really very cool. If you pay attention, you can kind of see a city in the clouds back there, kind of the golden city in the clouds there. The great ship, of course, the water, just the detail, the color of this is definitely one of the standout album cover arts in Christian music history. Someday I'll do a video, kind of maybe with my top 10 favorite cover arts of Christian music throughout Christian music history. This one probably would be on there, even though, again, I'm not a huge fan of the album itself. It is a great cover art. So to find this for $6 with the cover art in very good shape, there's a little bit of wear up here, a little ring wear at the top, but otherwise it's really in very good shape. The album is very much intact, includes the lyrics sleeve on the inside in really good shape. And the vinyl itself actually is pretty good shape too. I've only listened to 1 or 2 tracks off of it so far, but still some dust on it. I need to give it a thorough cleaning. But it's in good shape, and for $6, that was quite a find. Again, for those of you that have half-price books stores in your area, if you have not been visiting those for vinyl, those of you who are vinyl fans, which if you're watching, I assume you are, definitely check out half-price books. I have had such great luck at a variety of half-price books. This was from one in the half-price bookstore in the Houston area, where a majority of what I'll share with you today is from. Again, when I was traveling with work, happened to be there, checked out half-price books I've never been to before, and kind of hit a gold mine, as you'll see. All right, we're going to leave the half-price books finds just for a moment and go over to a find that I went after on eBay. You know, Larry Norman, grandfather of Christian rock, as he's often called, put out some great albums, some classic stuff. His trilogy, of course, is what he's, best known for, which are really not technically his first 3 albums. I think he had, a bootleg album and Street Level, and then he had Upon This Rock, and then really came the trilogy of albums after that. So, although some people say his very first album was Only Visiting This Planet, this one right here, that's not entirely accurate, but it is probably really his first best known album, his first classic album. Upon This Rock is good too, but this one really is classic. I really only set out to collect his trilogy of albums when I first started collecting vinyl. I was like, I want to get those 3 for sure. And this one was the only one I was missing. I have So Long Ago the Garden, and I've had In Another Land for a while, but I haven't had Only Visiting This Planet. And so came across this copy on eBay. It was about $25, but it's in really good shape. Now, this is a reissue, of course. You can tell it here by the dates, too. It actually came out in 72, but they have 72 through 78 here. It calls it the trilogy, which, of course, when this album first came out, it wasn't a trilogy yet. I don't even know if he was for sure that he knew it would be a trilogy. But so obviously this was printed years later, so it's a reissue. But I love the picture, the photo being full cover, as opposed to the early one, which has the original release has a black background, and then the photo is like in a rectangle, centered on the cover. So anyway, I like this one a lot, and it's in such good shape that I had to complete the trilogy, and finding one in such great shape, I thought this would be awesome. I really love this album. This is one I did hear early on when I got into Christian music and just fell in love with it. It's a great album. It's probably my second favorite album of the trilogy. In Another Land is my first. This one's a close second, and then So Long Ago the Garden is, probably the least favorite of the trilogy, but there's good stuff on there as well. Love this album, and just listening to it again the other night, it just reminded me of why Norman was so good, especially in his early years, the 60s and 70s, why he recorded some great stuff. There's just a simpleness to it. A lot of it's just him and guitar a lot of times. It's got a band sound to it. It's authentic. It's kind of genuine. It's also kind of revolutionary, you could say, for its time, 60s and 70s. But it's just really good music, and you see why he had a hard time, coming up with albums that would top this trilogy of albums after it. I think he chased that his whole career. And he managed to get a number of good ones that were close. I don't think anything ever quite topped, especially Only Visiting This Planet and In Another Land. I mean, those are just remain classics. But I'm glad to finally have this in the collection. Album cover and the vinyl are in really good shape, very clean editions. At some point I may go back and get the original album with the black cover, but I'm just happy to have this edition in such good shape. So, classic album. Even included a little insert in here. It came with it from the Fido library, an order form basically for additional music. Okay, back to some more half-price books finds. Still on the Larry Norman front, though. This was at a half-price bookstore in the Houston area. I found Larry Norman and People, which was the group he was with before he went solo. And this was the Israel tapes from 1980. And as it says here on the back, in 1968, Larry Norman left his band People and moved to Hollywood to begin his solo career. Until the night of this concert, 6 years later, he had not been on stage with any band. This album is an oral document of that night in 1974, when Larry Norman People appeared again on stage for one night only at UCLA to help raise money for the Israeli Fund. This vinyl ellipsoid contains their million-selling single I Love You from 1967 in tandem with the I don't even know how to pronounce that. Divagated Clone, which Larry and Randy Stonehill wrote 3 years later, and contains performances of material off of Larry's band album So Long Ago the Garden and other landmark projects. Unlike other so-called live albums, this one has not been taken back into the studio to overdub bass, lead vocals, guitar, and drums, etc., etc. This one just is what it is. So kind of unique in that sense. This one I found, again, it's in very good shape. This was $15 at Half Price Books, so this was not in the clearance bin. It says here 1974 AD. I've listened to a little bit of it. So far, not a lot. But again, it's in great shape. And, I really wasn't intending to collect much Larry Norman beyond the trilogy when I first started getting back into collecting vinyl. But I keep coming across Larry Norman albums here and there. And well, pick them up, because I don't know how much, I know a lot of them go for a lot of money sometimes on eBay and Discogs, depending upon the album. And, when I find them at even decent prices, I'm gonna go ahead and pick them up, because they can run expensively at times. But anyway, there's the back, the photo of him with the band People. And it's kind of cool. It's got I Love You, to the two versions of I Love You, Lonely by Myself, Broken Spirits, You Knew What You Were Doing, Fly, 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 and 5 others as well. And again, this is on Fido Records. It's got I Am the 6 O'Clock News on here, and Forget Your Hexagram, Sweet Song of Salvation. I've searched all around. So, good stuff. Again, an interesting album. It was not really, like I said, at the top of my list to get, but came across it. It's rare that I find Larry Norman at even half-price bookstores, but when I do, go ahead and grab it if it's reasonable. All right, next up is the last of my Larry Norman purchases for this trip, and this also was at Half Price Books. This is Larry Norman Stop This Flight from 1985, and this was, how much did I pay for this one? $6 for this one, $5.99 I think is what it was. So another nice find. This one kind of has a little more, I guess you could say a little more positive reputation behind it. The album cover has changed. I don't remember if they re-released this on vinyl. I know I have the CD of this too, and it's got this picture with Norman with the astronaut background there as the front cover art. So I changed it when they released it on CD, or I think it was actually CDR. Changed it to that because of, I think, this was ex-wife or something on here. And in this photo, so I think for re-release purposes, I had to change the cover art, something to that effect. Don't quote me on that. I don't know the whole story on that, but I know there's some. Obviously, Norman had a lot of broken relationships over the years, family-wise, and so something he had to respond to that basically in future re-releases. But this is the original cover art, again from 1985, and I like this album. It's a live performance as well, and it's got some cool tunes on it. It's only got 9 tracks, but it starts with the instrumental Finkian Etude, I believe is how it's pronounced. Stop This Flight, which is a great tune. Woman of God, What's Wrong with This Body, Don't You Want to Talk About It. I think those are all kind of neat tracks as well. and we sing the tune, which I've got that whole album, the tune, and this is just another rendition of that. Out of My System, #1, which I really like that one, probably as good as the title track. I Hope I'll See You in Heaven is really good, and then a great performance of Messiah to close out the album. So it's actually a really neat album, and again, for $6, I definitely couldn't pass Larry Norman vinyl up for $6. So that's probably my favorite one of these last two Normans that I talked about here. And it was the less expensive one, but I'm really glad to have that. So anyway, Stop This Flight, kind of cool performance album. You know, a lot of his live albums, even if he recycled a lot of songs on, and not just his live, but a lot of his releases and that came post trilogy, you know, recycled a lot of songs that had been on previous albums or releases. Live albums, of course, you'd expect some of that because it's live performance of greatest hits or whatever. But you know, even when he did that on albums, you know, he might have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 new songs and then a bunch of recycled stuff. Still, usually, always had some good stuff worth checking out. So even though I didn't plan on collecting vinyl beyond the trilogy originally, it is nice to come across good finds like this album here. I do like Stop This Flight. I think it's a neat album, and I like this original vinyl edition with all the photos too. It just gives it kind of a more personal touch. There's some you know, unique performances on here, some good performances on here, and also even, you know, his talk in between songs and stuff or leading into songs is always kind of cool and worth it as well too. This one he's got some engagement with the audience a little bit too, and that's kind of neat. So glad to have this album, and for $6, not a bad deal at all. Israeli Tapes is also, you know, another nice find, one that I haven't listened to a lot, I haven't even heard all the way through, so look forward to listening to this one more. But of the two, I think actually the less expensive Stop This Flight for me was kind of the standout deal. So we'll kind of leave Larry Norman behind, but not entirely. That was it as far as Larry Norman albums that he'd recorded. But this next one, All One Wall, Invisible Warfare, was actually one produced by Larry Norman. As you can see, Larry Norman Presents on the Star Song label. All One Wall was a kind of famous, semi-famous British rocker. He was part of a band called Wall and something else. I forgot the other guy. Anyway, he was part of a duo for a while in Britain. Then got a band together known as the All One Wall Band. I featured that album on video a while back, and then was able to do a solo album. He was always kind of chasing, I think, getting more of kind of the American crossover notoriety. But anyway, this is a solo album that Norman produced. It's really pretty good. I mentioned in the video where I talked about the All One Wall Band album, which I believe was their only album, that one really surprised me how good that was. I really liked All One Wall's writing and music. Lyrical writing was just really good. So I decided to go after this one. This was an eBay find, not a half-price bookstore find, but it was really reasonable. I think it was $13.39 on eBay. And again, it's in very good shape. The solo album is one that I've listened to briefly before, not on this vinyl, but on digital, I think, or CD or YouTube, something like that. And it's kind of half and half. It's half good and half like, oh, I wish it was a little bit better. But there's still a lot of great material on here, and I'm really glad to have this. The first half in particular is really strong. The second half, I think, if I remember correctly, starts out pretty strong, and then it kind of gets a little more hit or miss on some of the remaining tracks. But neat album. Wish he'd done more and kept going. Includes the insert sleeve. Talks about the British invasion, of course, because of All One Wall's British background. Vinyl itself is in really good shape. It's just a nice edition. There's even, I just saw a receipt in here from 1982. Doesn't say the name of the store. It's just kind of a generic handwritten receipt, but originally purchased for $6.90. So pretty cool. On November 26, 1982. Pretty cool. So I like little added elements of authenticity and that add to the story behind the album, the personal or the specific vinyl edition itself, and not just the overall album. Also forgot to note it did come with the lyric sheet as well, with the great British flag in the background there behind the lyrics. So anyway, kind of neat. It's again in great shape. I love finding copies that are in really good shape. Include all the lyric sheets and inserts and sleeves and all that, and even have, like I said, the little receipt with it is just kind of a bonus thing along with it. But to find them at a great price is a nice bonus as well. All right, next up, here's another eBay find. I think I got this along with the Larry Norman one, if I remember correctly. Servant Rockin Revival. This is from, I think, 1979. This was their first album, second album. I think it's their first. Don't quote me on that, but I think it's their first. This is another band where I wasn't really planning on collecting their whole discography on vinyl. I wanted Light Maneuvers, which was one of my all-time favorite, which is their second to last album. That was really all I was mainly going for. Somebody gave me a World of Sand, which I think was the album that preceded that. And later on, I found Swimming in a Human Ocean on vinyl, so I went and picked that up. Well, at that point, then I'm like, okay, I think they only have the 5 albums in their discography. And I thought, well, if I come across the other 2, I'll pick them up. Well, this one I saw, again, this was a really good price, only $8, I think it was. $9 total on eBay. And I thought, well, I'll go ahead and pick it up. It had a little trimmed corner, but again, in really very good shape. This is the original Toonsmith vinyl edition. I love the way it says, instead of side A and B, it says top side and bottom side on the label as far as the flip sides of the vinyl. And it actually sounds really good. It's in great shape. Doesn't appear to have been listened to a whole lot. So I've got that one. So now I'm only lacking their, I think it's their second album. I can't remember the title of it. But I know there is a red vinyl edition of that second album. So I'm figuring, okay, I might as well finish out the collection and seek out that red vinyl edition of that album. But anyway, this is a nice one. Again, not top tier Servant for me. Top tier Servant is Light Maneuvers, and a lot of stuff off of Swimming in a Human Ocean too. But a lot of people love World of Sand, that third album. I'm kind of hit or miss on that one. This one actually, just from having Spot listened to a number of tracks on it, probably I like better than even World of Sand maybe. But anyway, I look forward to getting to know that album a little bit better. Nice find, and for $9, who can argue? All right, back to Half Price Bookstores finds again. This one was probably the best deal price-wise of my recent purchases. This was only $2 or $3. It was in the clearance section. White Heart Vital Signs from 1982, was it? 1984. And this is not one that I necessarily was going to pick up on vinyl. Neither was their first album, which I showed in a previous video that I discovered somewhere inexpensively. Went ahead and picked it up because I think it was in the clearance section as well. Didn't intend to initially go in search of this one, but when you come across it and it's $2 or $3, it's worth picking up. So now I've got the first 3 or 4 albums all on vinyl along with Freedom. But anyway, it's an okay album. It's not, White Heart at their most rocking. The one song I really like off of it is the title track, Vital Signs, near the end of side 2. I like kind of the acoustic start to it, and then how it kind of kicks in to more of a rockin' sound. I like the album cover a lot, though, so it is kind of nice to have it in the collection. The band photo on the back is kind of cool too. So, it's neat for what it is. It's nice to add it to the collection. Finding, especially later White Heart on vinyl, those albums that were released on vinyl is very, very difficult. I think many of them were UK releases or just very limited vinyl releases. So getting all these earlier albums is kind of nice to have to complete the White Heart collection. But anyway, it is for $2-3. Nice addition to have. It's got everything in it. Again, in great shape. The sleeve is very good shape. Lyrics on one side, band photo on the other. And the vinyl itself also looks like it's hardly been played. It doesn't have much dirt on it at all, or scuffs or anything like that. So again, I think it was $3, well worth adding to the collection. All right, now we're going to start getting into a number of albums, some that are a little bit rarer, interesting finds to come across at a used, bookstore, record shop, and some that are, much harder rock or more kind of classic stuff a lot of you guys will recognize and probably be curious about. This was a Half Price Bookstore find as well. Undercover God Rules, their album from '83. Don't think this was their first album, but I could be wrong on that. I'm not real up on the Undercover discography. I kind of came into them more around the Forum era, much later. I really love that album a lot, and then kind of went back and listened to some of their older stuff. But they're kind of a punk rock, maybe a little new wave-ish style band. And Joey Taylor, I think, became Ojo Taylor, if I'm correct on that. Dan Willard. I forgot each of the band members' names. Again, not real familiar with Undercover, but cool album art, very 80s album art. Very distinctive sound, especially on these early albums. They changed musical styles a bit over the years, but this is definitely an early effort. That very distinctive sound, and more kind of I guess evangelical lyrics in some ways, but cool album. One I've never really listened to fully for a while now, so I look forward to popping this on. I put a couple songs on just to test the vinyl itself out. It seems to be in really good shape. Here we go. Yep, there's Ojo Taylor, Gary Olson on drums, Jim on guitar, background vocals, and B on lead vocals and tenor sax. So interesting stuff. So the sleeve is in here with the lyrics and the band photo, and the vinyl itself. From my quick listen to it, seems to be in very good shape as well. Any Undercover fans out there? Again, I'm not a big one, as you can probably tell, the way I stumbled through talking about this. I don't know a ton about them. Undercover Forum, their Forum album was, for me, one of my favorites in Christian music. I just love that album, but that's not necessarily really representative of what their past style was, and a lot of people don't like that album, but I love it, and I have that on CD. So anyway, finding this was kind of a cool find. But what do y'all think of Undercover? Y'all have any favorite tunes you recommend? An album of theirs that you like, can recommend to me. Maybe I can get a little more into their past history a little bit better. All right, next up is another classic album from a classic Christian rock band that everybody will recognize. Can't remember if this was at the same Half Price Books or another one. This might have been another one. But Petra, Captured in Time and Space, their live album from 86, from the Beat the System tour, live performances. The last album, technically, that featured Greg X Volts with this lineup until they came back and did Back to the Rock. But anyway, this was the album I was missing from my discography vinyl collection. I think now I have everything except Washes Wider Than. But this was a great find, only $10 at Half Price Books, and again, in very good shape. I kept thinking originally that this was a gatefold release, but it's not. It's just two vinyls in a single sleeve, which I'd forgotten that was the case. But it's got everything in here. The lyrics sheet sleeves, which appear to be in really good shape. One vinyl is in a plastic sleeve. The other vinyl is in the paper sleeve. But again, very good shape. I've listened to some of the tracks and seems to be in great shape. This was the tour that I came on with Petra. I bought Beat the System when it came out, and then was able to go to the concert in Houston, of all places, where I found this album, and see them perform there in the Houston area. So nice to find this one, and for $9.99, great. I mean, for all practical purposes, I feel like my Petra vinyl collection is complete. I'm not in a hurry to go out and get Washes Wider Than. It's not necessarily a big favorite album of mine, but if I come across that at a good price on vinyl, I'll pick that up. I do have Jekyll and Hyde, ordered. I think Girder Records is releasing that on vinyl by the end of the year, I think it is. So they've got a vinyl release of that, I guess Petra's last official album. Some people really love that. I think it's slightly overrated, but I like collecting most of their discography on vinyl, so I've got that pre-ordered for when that comes out. Other than that, I feel really good about my Petra vinyl collection. I'm kind of pretty much done, I think, with that. All right, next up is a Discogs purchase, and this is one of the great classic albums, one of my all-time favorite albums. It's DeGarmo and Key's 1987 album, D&K, or some call it their self-titled album. Great album of 80s rock and just great classic DeGarmo and Key material. One of my all-time favorites, if not the favorite, from their discography. It's got that great white album cover art with the guitar-keytar combo and those cool 80s paint colors there. The great logo there. Kind of very minimalist, very simple, clean looking, but also just really definitive and kind of iconic in some ways. Stylized band photo on the back, the keyboard elements from that part of the front cover art there. Just really cool. This is an album I love so much and have wanted on vinyl for a while. I had the cassettes back in high school, and then also had and have the CD as well, but I have never owned the vinyl until recently. Found this on Discogs for about $20, a little over $20, which was a really good price. Usually I've seen this for much, much more. It's just one of those albums from DeGarmo and Key that is a classic to me. Great southern rock and hard rock and pop rock in here. It's just a fantastic album. This one, along with, I think which came a little later, 91 maybe, was The Pledge, another great album, which was their last album to be released on vinyl. And I'd love to get that one on vinyl yet too, but that one goes for $50-$60 or more if you can find it. I believe was a UK only release, and might have been just a limited US release, but I think it was a UK only release, and just very difficult to find and very pricey. But this one really probably topped my list as far as ones to pick up on vinyl that I had never had before. So great album. It's actually listed as a special edition. If you look at the vinyl here, probably see here in red it has text that says special limited edition, and then over here it numbers that this is number 3015 of 10,000 copies. So kind of unique in that regard. This edition, or this particular copy of the album, is in very good shape. And actually the vinyl feels pretty sturdy. I don't think it's 180 gram necessarily, but it definitely does not feel like flimsy vinyl like some often do that were made back then. But anyway, it came with a little flyer insert about their air care ministry that DeGarmo and Key were promoting at that time. Also comes with this little booklet, which they called a Bible study booklet. I think this is basically the same thing that came with the CDs, but it's got all the lyrics and the credits. But it also has, kind of uniquely this time, beside the lyrics, it's got every Bible verse citation for virtually every line or paragraph or verse, to kind of help you go through biblically to determine really the content. And it's also got questions at the bottom, so you could actually go through this entire album like a Bible study. I've thought about doing a video just about that very thing, about going through this like a Bible study, and kind of, looking at the meaning behind each of the songs and the album as a whole that way. So maybe we'll do that as a separate video. But classic album, absolutely love it. Great find. All right, next up, I'm going to call this my find of the day. We're back to Half Price Books, where I found this one at, and it's Whitecross's debut album. This was from 87, I believe. Yes, 1987. I've never seen this on vinyl before, especially in a half-price bookstore. I was very surprised to see this sitting in a bin, actually at the top of a bin in the Christian music section. So not a clearance item. This was for $19.99, so it was a little pricier than what I usually pick up at half-price books, but it is in such good shape, and I was so surprised to find this. This is a rare find indeed, but excited to actually discover it. And this again was a half-price bookstore in Houston that I went to. So nice find. Seems to be in just excellent condition. Came with the sleeve inside with the lyrics on one side and all these great band photos on the other. And the vinyl itself is in really good shape. This is the pure metal release, and it sounds good. I have not detected any scratches or anything. Just an incredible find. My find of the day, of the trip, for sure. So I'm really glad to have found something like this. Haven't looked to see really what it goes for on Discogs, so I'm pretty sure it goes for more, or at least that plus more. You have to pay shipping as well. But to me, $20 was kind of a steal of a deal. So really glad to find and own this one. It's the only Whitecross album I have on vinyl. I've got a number of them on CD, but never owned a Whitecross vinyl ever. So this is my first Whitecross vinyl. Great stuff. Do y'all have a favorite Whitecross album? I love this one. I know there was the re-recorded version of this too. It was called Whitecross 1987, which many prefer that. Some people love Hammer and Nail, I think it is. Some people love Triumphant Return better. Anyway, what's y'all's favorite Whitecross album? Be sure and let me know in the comments down below. Next up, from that same half-price bookstore I was at, I found Mylan and Broken Heart Greatest Hits on vinyl. Really, everything on this I've already got on all the rest of my Mylan and Broken Heart albums. I've got all the other vinyls that all these greatest hits songs come from. But I always told myself, well, if I ever see this vinyl, because I knew it was released on vinyl, this greatest hits album, I've got the CD of it. But I thought, well, if I ever actually saw the vinyl of this, I'd probably pick it up. It's just one more vinyl edition to kind of add to the collection, since I've got so many of Mylan and Broken Heart's albums on vinyl. And lo and behold, there it was at Half Price Books. This was, how much did I pay for this? This was $8, so $7.99 I think was the sticker. And again, in very, very good shape. I don't think there's anything special about it. It's just a Myrrh release, greatest hits black vinyl. There's no insert or anything with this. I don't believe there was, but if there was, it didn't. This one doesn't come with it. So again, kind of cool edition. I like the cover art with the ticket and the pics and everything like that on there. So just kind of nice to add to the collection. All right, I think that's all of the Half Price Books finds that I have. I've got one vinyl left, and then the CD. Both of these were purchases I made through Roxx Records, actually. As probably many of you all do, you have a list of things you want to get from different music vendors, right? So I've got my list of stuff that I'd ideally like to get from Boone, stuff I'd like to get from Girder, stuff I'd like to get from Roxx, stuff I'd like to get off eBay, and then just general stuff that I hope to find whenever I go looking at vinyl shops or half-price bookstores or what have you. So these are both items that I kind of had on the list. Been sitting on the list for a while, but sometimes you come back to them. Sometimes you wait for them to go on sale or come at a really good price. And this first one did. This one is Deliverances, the Subversive Kind on vinyl, which, for those of you who watch a lot of my videos, have probably seen I have this on vinyl already, and yes, I do. This is the 2017 version, so the original vinyl release from 2017. But I have the red vinyl edition of this. There's also a black vinyl. And then, as you can tell by the little sticker up here, there's a green vinyl edition. That's this one. There was 200 black vinyl copies made, 150 red, and 150 green. The green originally were only released to, I think, the GoFundMe campaign supporters when this album was first funded or attempted to be funded, I think it was. I'm not sure which. No, I guess it must have been fully funded. I think I'm confusing this with Camelot and Smithereens. But anyway, so the campaign supporters who supported the GoFundMe for this got these green copies. And that was, I think, the only way to get it. Well, apparently there were a few copies left or some extra copies, however that works. And Roxx Records has been selling them. And usually they've been pretty high priced, $40 or maybe even a little more in the past. But a week or so ago, a few days ago, whatever it was, I saw this drop down to $20 for a copy, so I snapped it up, and glad I did, because I have the red copy. Don't have any of the black vinyl copies, but I have the red vinyl, and I thought the green vinyl would be kind of neat. Wasn't going to pay $40 for another duplicate edition, but $20 was the sweet spot. I think since then it's gone up in price again, back to 40 or maybe more, and I think there's only probably 3 or 4 copies left, so it's getting down there. They probably will not reduce it again, but you never know. This helped to move a copy for me by reducing the price, but green vinyl, kind of a cool look to it. So it's a great album, one that's grown on me a lot. My favorite track on here is track 4, The Black Hand. Interesting cover art. I'm not actually entirely sure of all the meaning behind this. I really need to give this album more of a deep dive. I've kind of been a little bit more of a peripheral listener to a lot of the tracks, but I really need to give the album and the meaning behind it more of a deep dive here one of these days. But it is good. I do like the music. This was supposedly kind of a return to form. Deliverance has had all sorts of music over the eras, over the decades and years. Started with a thrash metal kind of focus, then left it to do more of a they had Queensryche vibe, more of a David Bowie type vibe, all sorts of different styles, different forms and styles of metal over the years. And this album was supposedly kind of a return to more of the thrash metal style of music from their first several albums. And it is, but it's also different. Some people were disappointed that it wasn't another Weapons of Your Warfare or Weapons of Our Warfare album, but I think it's actually kind of cool. It's similar to their thrash metal days, but also uniquely different, and kind of really builds off the maturity of everything they've done in between. So anyway, good album. So I picked that up because it was a good price. Okay, so that's it for the vinyl. Last but not least was a CD that I also purchased, as I said, from Roxx here, and that is Angelica, the Demo Session CD. I think I've got every other Angelica album on CD, and I was only lacking this Demo Sessions one, which I remember when I first saw this out, I thought, it probably sounds pretty raw, pretty rough. I don't know if I really need to add that to my collection, so I didn't even bother with it. And then later on, I think I was listening either on YouTube or on one of the music sites, whether it's Roxx or Gerder or something, and I listened to some little demo tracks or some sample tracks off of this, and I said, that actually sounds really good. It doesn't sound like demos. It actually sound really good. So then I thought I probably ought to add this to the collection. But it's been running about $16 ever since I made that decision that, I might want to pick it up. So I kind of waited, thinking it was probably more of like a $10 album or something like that. But, the other day I thought, well, since I'm ordering the Deliverance album, we'll pick up the Angelica CD as well and complete my Angelica CD collection. I do have a couple of their albums on vinyl as well. But, you get to a point where you start collecting through a lot of these bands' discography. It's like, I'm only lacking this album or that one. Yeah, I've got Angelica, Walking in the Faith, and Without Words. This is a different looking album art than what I've got, but I've got that, and then also I think they had 1 or 2 other ones after that aren't listed here, but there's 5, 6 albums total, including the demos here, probably 6. So this completes that part of my collection. Anyway, that's what I got. There you go, a quick look at some of the latest vinyl and a CD find from during my work trips here recently, either ordering online or buying at half-price bookstores. Again, so sorry it's been so long since I got a video out. There is a lot more coming. I'm going to get back to the Jerusalem What is the Message videos, so we'll do Jerusalem Volume 2 coming up next week if all goes well. Also get an album of the week out this week or next week as well too. So back in the rhythm, back in it. More Tim Talks Christian Rock coming up. So anyway, y'all have a great rest of your day. Go out and listen to some great Christian rock, and above all else, stay in God's Word. Blessings, y'all. Have a great one. See you next time. Bye-bye.